Hi, my name is Greg Craola Simkins. I'm a ballet dancer. We're here at American Apparel, about to do a little model shoot, and let's go. Hey guys, this is Greg Craola Simkins. I'm here at KP Projects Gallery. We're getting ready for my show, The Escape Artist, which opens Saturday, May 19th, here in Los Angeles. All right, the theme of the show, well, the show is called The Escape Artist, and the idea of escape is pretty much just getting lost in your work, getting lost in your imagination. I find that when I'm working on paintings and when I'm concepting a show, I'm usually playing with that world that's going on inside my head, talking to those voices that are kind of always there. It's kind of like the things you see when you're dreaming, you know, when you're sleeping at night, when you're daydreaming, places you get lost in your head. I kind of want to go there with my paintings. So the idea of the escape artist is basically me. I'm the escape artist in this situation, and I'm painting to get lost, basically. I want to go into my imagination and kind of see what's there and have fun. Getting inspired to work on a show is, I guess a lot of it's subconscious. You don't really, it gets to a point where it's like, what's inspiring me? I don't know. I like to sit and draw and just, I'm doodling in my sketchbook all the time. Like, I'm hanging out with my kids, we're drawing, we're making up funny stories together, and just, I like to draw out their imaginations and see where their heads go. And mine kind of goes there too with it. We watch a lot of cartoons, but then for some reason I got hooked again on Hieronymus Bosch. Like he's always in the back of my head ever since I was a kid, and like for some reason I was just looking through a bunch of his paintings again, and I was like, man, I love how populated his work gets. And in my head, like with, you know, parts of these pieces, especially the escape artist piece, and I guess that kind of visuals, those kind of visuals somehow morphed with like all the nature stuff I've been looking at, like nature photography, and all the cartoons I watch with my kids. It's just like some big mashup. And I guess my brain is always mashing these things up and spinning them together and spitting out like what you see back here, just some kind of weird assemblage of creatures and objects. And it's, like I said before, that's my escape. Like once I get to sit here and paint something like this, that's just a morphed madness. It just makes me comfortable and happy, and I feel like I can get lost in the work and, you know, pop my head out like 8 hours later from painting and go, whoa, did that just happen? I totally got in the zone, I totally got lost, and then come back and then there's more of the piece finished. I don't know, that's my escape. Okay, there is a backstory. There's definitely a backstory to all the work, the work since the past, gosh, is it 9 years? Ever since the Pearl Thief show, and I think the show right before that, I developed a storyline, and it's grown with every single show progressing. Every piece connects, and it all takes place in this world I call the outside. The main protagonist is a character called the White Knight, who's Ralph in my stories. He's a kid that gets stuck in the outside and grows up there and has to find his way around. And I have these characters, all these characters in these black suits with the white stars on their faces. And like this show, I focus more on them. They call them the Starry Night Drama Club. And they kind of are like the puppeteers behind everything that goes on in the world. They're kind of running things and making sure everything works good. And they're passing around these eggs that these birds come from that are, I always paint these birds, but it's like, what's the deal with the birds? Well, the characters, you know, befriend these birds and they become I don't know, they're defenders. They protect, you know, everything that goes on in the outside. And the blue jay later befriends my White Knight character. And this is kind of like supposedly before the White Knight is in all the scenes. Like this whole show happens before Ralph grows up in the outside, which people have seen this character in a lot of my other shows. So he's specifically not in this show. It's the characters who train him. The people who train him are in this show.
So this is a prequel?
A prequel. And so like, the bird Breeze, the blue jay, becomes his best friend in the outside, and you see him in a lot of the other paintings and a lot of the other shows. So I just wanted to show where he came from. He came from one of these eggs that these characters make sure are safe and taken care of. And I have another character in this show who's one of these guys who kind of has had enough because these guys don't do enough to protect the birds. And there's some bad stuff that happens to some. There's basically an idea of a crow getting killed, and one of these characters rebels against these guys, says, you know what, we're not doing enough to protect these birds. He puts on the crow's head as a mask and goes after the people that hurt that crow, and his attempt is to take them out. Whereas these guys are just protecting the birds and the eggs. I have this group of characters called the Thorns, and they wear bird masks and stuff and go kill these creatures that are killing birds. It's kind of like a flip, like the bird's wearing the mask of the man in this one. A lot of this stuff is just more in my sketchbooks and in my head, and when I do a piece, I'm like, okay, there's that character. But that's Corvid. It's called Corvid's Last Dance, and he put on the mask of the crow. So the main piece for the show is this escape artist, which is the same name as the show, which makes sense, I guess. Kind of wanted it to have like a main focused character kind of taking on the role of the escape artist. He's on his journey, but I had the idea, wouldn't it be kind of a little different to make his head like a stagecoach and have the actual character being the character inside the head of the character holding the egg that he's taking to protect. And there's some of my old characters I put in I've had repeat in different paintings just to keep the story going, like the Strawberry Octopus and my character Rook, who has now grown a mustache and he's a knight. I just wanted to be like the interaction of them protecting this egg. They have all this crew protecting this one singular thing. I don't know, I wanted to play with the water dynamics. Somehow this whole thing is floating in the air in the clouds. The Strawberry Octopus occurred many years ago from a conversation with my son. We were looking through a book of deep sea creatures, and we were just excited on every single page, and his excitement got me excited, and he said, "Look, Dad, it's a Strawberry Octopus." And I was like, what? It was like a jeweled squid or some kind of specific squid, but it had these little bumps all over it. I'm like, yeah, it is a Strawberry Octopus. I'm glad I thought of that. And I wrote it down, and I drew a sketch the next day of it. I love the creature. I love painting that character. It just makes so much sense to me. It seems like it needs to exist in the world. So if I paint it, maybe, you know, it exists in some form. And now we have Strawberry Octopi. Orcas are dolphins, right? So why not paint a dolphin that has orca coloring, but it's still a dolphin? It's a dorca, right? I just find it interesting to put the skins of animals on different creatures, like switch them up. Why not? This is like the only place you can do that. You don't have to stay literal and real. We're making art. I'm not trying to take a photo of something. I'm trying to show a photo of what's in my head, and it doesn't have to look like something that's in reality. It contains elements that we see. I think that's what grounds it. I find no reason why any of this should make complete sense in our world. It makes all the sense in the world in the outside, and that's the only place it needs to make sense. I'd like to do the charcoals. Sometimes I'd like to do them as studies to get a flow of a character or a position, like a stance, a gesture. I like the feel of charcoal. It's very forgiving. You can be really messy until the end where you can tighten things up, as you see. And there's a painting called The Young Mare, which is this deer creature I have in, like, mainly he's in this piece called Beyond Shadows from a couple years ago. And he's in this painting called Little Dreaming Night. But I wanted to do a portrait of him when he was younger, before he became the mayor. And he's a deer, and he doesn't have his antlers yet, but I just really am able to focus on, okay, I'm doing a portrait of a deer. What's it look like here? Can I give it character in its eyes and its mouth, but still keep it a deer? And with the charcoals, you can really kind of mess it up. Okay, I'm gonna redo that, I'm gonna redo that, and just tighten it up at the end, and it's just a really nice medium. In this show, there's a lot of eggs, like these weird shaped, almost vase face looking things, but I'm calling them eggs for the show, because where did these giant birds I always paint come from? Well, they come from these special looking eggs. So I wanted to have, like in the paintings, these eggs being passed around and protected by this group. We were talking earlier about, I've had fun encounters with birds. I've had a couple different black phoebes come into my studio and hang out with me for full days while I'm painting. I've had a couple birds knock themselves out on the window and able to go out and nurse them back to health, but then, you know, hung out in the studio and they come back, and I have my blue jays I feed every morning, my scrub jays, in the backyard. Me and the kids feed them peanuts and mealworms, and they come wake us up and make sure, if we're in the kitchen, they'll go to the kitchen window so we see them. And if we're in the studio, they're like hanging out squawking in the studio. So I have my particular birds I hang out with, and we call the one main blue jay Breeze, just like we call this blue jay Breeze. So it's kind of a cool connection me and the kids have with birds. I guess the main way that graffiti has inspired how I paint now was it it made it so I wasn't afraid to paint big, to paint large. I look at a large canvas and I don't get intimidated because I've painted walls like a lot bigger than that. And so when I come to a canvas, I'm like, oh, this is kind of small, you know? I really like to paint large canvases. It feels good. It feels like you can walk into them and it makes you feel like you're part of that world on a big canvas. And it's always fun to sneak in like shout outs to my crews. In the pieces, you'll see like little WAIs and CBS or Lord's little hit-ups, or you have to kind of find the little riddle in certain pieces, like how did he put it in here? Is it in there? And I hide other things in the paintings. There's stuff hidden in the clocks. There's stuff hidden like all around. And people always ask me about the clocks, what do the clocks have to do? I think time is our biggest enemy and friend, and I always have a love-hate relationship with time, deadlines and whatnot. But a lot of the reasoning for the clocks in the outside and in these paintings is time works differently there. And some of these creatures that have a clock are in control of that time. But yeah, the clocks are just that battle with time, and these creatures can control time. I just look at making this work, this body of work, as my opportunity to go into that world and explore my imagination.